The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Coalition hummed with tension as representatives from dozens of species gathered. Floating holographic displays showed star maps across the spiral arm, each blinking dot representing a world under Coalition control. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, carved from a single crystal formation that amplified voices and translated languages in real time. Ancient Vorthak Elder Kethmorai stood at the center podium, his weathered appendages trembling slightly as he gripped the speaking staff. His species had witnessed the birth and death of 7 galactic civilizations. When he spoke, even the most arrogant races usually listened. But not today. Young ones, heed my words carefully. His voice carried the weight of millennia, each word deliberate and heavy. The creatures from the third planet of Sol system, these humans, must not be disturbed. They are persistence made flesh, survivors beyond measure. A wave of chittering laughter erupted from the insectoid section. Their translator buzzed with amusement as they shared jokes about primitive mammals. The massive Titan representatives shifted in their reinforced seating, their stone-like faces showing nothing but boredom. Admiral Zexthai of the Zephyrian fleet stood up, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights. His species had conquered 47 worlds in the past century alone. Their silver ships were the fastest in known space, and their plasma weapons could crack planets. Elder, you speak of primitives who still war among themselves. Zexthai's artificial vocal cords created a sound like grinding metal. Our long-range scouts have been watching them for months. They barely maintain space travel. Their largest ships would fit inside our cargo bays. The holographic display shifted to show Earth, a blue marble spinning slowly in the void. Smaller images popped up showing human cities, their primitive rockets, and their scattered space stations. To the Coalition it looked pathetic. Commander Velnos of the Keth Empire slammed his armored fist on his seat's armrest, creating a sound like thunder. The Keth were warriors born, their red skin scarred from countless battles. They respected strength above all else. Their technology is crude, Velnos growled, his tusks gleaming. Look at these images. They still use chemical propulsion for their ships. One swift strike will bring them to heel, just like the orbital miners of Kepler 442. The Psychic Collective's representative, a translucent being whose thoughts appeared as floating symbols above her head, added her voice to the discussion. I have touched the edges of their minds through long-range scanning. They are chaotic, undisciplined. Their thoughts jump from war to peace, to love, to hate in moments. Easy to manipulate. Elder Kethmorai's ancient eyes dimmed, the bioluminescent patterns on his face pulsing slowly with what his species called deep sadness. He had tried to warn the Zephyrians about the Silicon Hive 60,000 years ago. They had not listened then either. The Silicon Wars had lasted 3 centuries and ended with the complete extinction of both species. You mistake aggression for weakness, division for fragility, he said, his voice growing quieter, forcing the chamber to strain to hear him. I have seen this pattern before. Species that fight among themselves often possess something far more dangerous than unity. They possess adaptation. The Trade Federation's representative, a blob-like creature whose body constantly shifted colors, based on profit calculations, interrupted with a gurgling sound that translated as laughter. Elder, respectfully, you're getting old. These humans can't even agree on how to manage their own planet's climate. Half of them deny it's even changing. How could such a divided species pose any threat to us? Admiral Zexthai activated his personal hologram projector, showing detailed scans of human military installations. Look at their weapons. They still use gunpowder-based projectiles. Kinetic energy weapons. Our shield technology renders such primitive tools completely useless. Their space navy consists of barely 200 ships, added a hive mind drone, its clicking speech pattern almost musical. We have 40,000 vessels in this sector alone. Elder Kethmorai turned slowly, his ancient joints creaking audibly in the silent chamber. Numbers mean nothing when you do not understand your enemy. I have studied the fragments of data from their global networks. They tell stories, endless stories, of individuals who refuse to surrender even when facing impossible odds. They call them heroes. Stories, scoffed Commander Velnos. Fairy tales for children. No, the elder's voice grew firm. Instructions, training manuals. They are preparing their young minds for exactly the situation you plan to create. The chamber erupted in discussion as various species debated among themselves. The aquatic councils bubbled with excitement about new water worlds to claim. The machine intelligence calculated the profit margins of human slave labor. The energy beings whispered about harvesting human neural patterns for their databases. Finally, the Coalition's prime speaker, a four-armed centaurian with golden skin, called for order. The question before us is simple. Do we extend an invitation to these humans to join our coalition as a protected junior species, or do we proceed with standard integration protocols? The vote was swift and decisive. 47 species voted for immediate integration. Only the elders voted against, their ancient voices drowned out by the enthusiasm of younger races eager for new territories and resources. The coalition would bring civilization to human space, as they had done countless times before. It was a simple formula that had worked for millennia. Arrive, demonstrate superior firepower, accept surrender, integrate the new species into the lower tiers of galactic society. The elders' warnings fell on deaf ears, just as they had so many times throughout galactic history. But this time felt different. This time, Elder Kethmarai watched the vote with something approaching terror in his ancient eyes. As the chamber emptied and species began preparing their fleets, he whispered to himself in the old tongue, "They have awakened something that should have been left sleeping." Captain Jin stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Teguk, watching his tactical display with growing unease. Red dots appeared across the screen like a rash spreading over Earth's orbital space. First 10, then 50, then hundreds of alien vessels dropping out of hyperspace. "Sir, we're getting size readings on these ships," reported Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. Her voice stayed steady, but Jin could see her hands shaking. "The smallest ones are twice the size of our biggest cruisers. The largest." "Sir, it's bigger than Manhattan." Jin nodded grimly. Earth's entire space fleet consisted of 200 ships, most of them converted mining vessels and cargo haulers, fitted with whatever weapons humanity could manage. Against this alien armada, they looked like fishing boats facing a hurricane. "Communications incoming from the alien fleet," announced Sergeant Kim from the communications console. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The main screen flickered, showing a being that looked like it was made of living metal. Its voice came through the speakers in perfect Korean, which somehow made it even more unsettling. "Inhabitants of the third planet, I am Admiral Zextai of the Galactic Coalition. Your world has been selected for integration into our civilized society. Surrender immediately, and your transition will be swift. Resist and face complete annihilation." Jin stepped forward, activating the ship's broadcast system. Every human vessel in the defense fleet would hear his words, as would the alien invaders. "This is Captain Jin of the Earth Defense Force. You are not welcome here. Leave now, and we won't destroy you." Laughter echoed from the alien communication channel, a sound like grinding machinery. "Primitive, you face the might of the Galactic Coalition. Your largest weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your fastest ships move like insects compared to ours. Submit, and your deaths will be swift." Jin smiled grimly, thinking of his grandfather's stories about the Korean War, about facing impossible odds against a massive enemy force. "We've heard that before. From our own kind." The alien fleet began, moving into attack formation, their massive ships blotting out the sun as they positioned themselves above Earth's major cities. Energy readings spiked across Jin's sensors as the invaders charged their weapons. "All ships, this is Admiral Jin," he broadcast to the human fleet. "They think we'll roll over and surrender because they're bigger and stronger. They don't know." "Us very well, do they?" Captain Tay's voice crackled through the comm from his destroyer. "Ready to show them what humans do when someone threatens our home, sir." "Lieutenant Su, are your fighter squadrons prepared?" Jin asked. "Locked, loaded, and ready to make them regret coming here," came Su's reply from the fighter bay. The first alien plasma beam lanced down towards Seoul, a column of energy that could vaporize a city block. But Jin had expected this. Human ships weren't as advanced, but they were positioned exactly where they needed to be. "Ramming speed!" Jin shouted. The human fleet erupted into motion. Instead of trying to match the aliens' superior firepower, they did something the Coalition had never encountered. They used their ships as weapons. Captain Tay's destroyer accelerated directly into the path of the plasma beam, its hull glowing white-hot as it absorbed the energy meant for the city below. But instead of retreating, Tay pushed his engines beyond their safety limits. "My engines are overloading," Tay reported over the comm. "Hull integrity at 30% and falling." "Captain Tay, pull back," Jin ordered. "Negative, sir. I've got a clear shot at their command ship." Jin watched in amazement as Tay's destroyer, trailing fire and atmosphere, slammed directly into the side of a Coalition dreadnought. The explosion lit up space like a second sun, and when the light faded, both ships were gone. The alien communications channel erupted with shocked voices, speaking in languages Jin didn't understand. Clearly, they hadn't expected humans to sacrifice their own ships so readily. Lieutenant Su's fighter squadron was demonstrating the same principle on a smaller scale. When her fighter's weapons failed after a lucky alien hit, she didn't retreat to the carrier for repairs. "This is Lieutenant Su. My guns are dead, but my engines work fine." "Su, return to base for refit," Jin commanded. "Sorry, sir. I see a gap in their fighter screen." Su's fighter, no bigger than a school bus, accelerated toward a Coalition bomber. That was preparing to attack Tokyo. The alien pilot tried to evade, but Su had anticipated the maneuver. Her fighter struck the bomber's engine section, and both craft disappeared in a ball of flame. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships with damaged weapons systems became guided missiles. Human fighters with dead engines used their momentum to ram alien vessels. Human crews on crippled ships overloaded their reactors rather than surrender. The Coalition had overwhelming technological superiority, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. When a human ship was crippled, it became more dangerous, not less. Admiral Zexthai's voice came through the comm, no longer mocking but filled with confusion. "What is wrong with these creatures? Why do they not surrender when faced with certain defeat?" Jin opened a channel to the alien commander. "Because this is our home, and we'd rather die fighting than live as your slaves." The battle raged for 6 hours. The Coalition won, as everyone knew they would. Their superior numbers and technology eventually overwhelmed the human defense fleet. But when the smoke cleared, they had lost 47 ships to humanity's makeshift navy. In the rubble of Earth's orbital defenses, Jin's damaged command ship drifted powerless. He listened to alien voices discussing casualty reports in amazement. They had expected to lose maybe 3 or 4 ships at most. The Coalition won, but at a cost they never anticipated. These humans fought like cornered animals, except they weren't cornered. They chose to fight this way. They chose to make every victory as expensive as possible. And in the depths of space, Coalition commanders were beginning to realize that conquering humanity might be more difficult than they had ever imagined. Months after Earth's bombardment, Admiral Zexthai was reviewing routine patrol reports when his aide burst into his command chamber. The young Zephyrian's metallic face showed signs of stress that their species rarely displayed. "Sir, we have a problem in the outer rim sectors," the aide reported, his artificial voice crackling with static. 3 mining stations in the Kepler system have gone completely silent." Zexthai's glowing eyes dimmed with annoyance. "Mining stations went offline all the time due to equipment failures or worker disputes. Send a maintenance crew to restore communications." "Sir, we already did. The crew arrived 6 hours ago and found something unusual." The main display activated, showing footage from the rescue ship's cameras. The mining stations floated intact. In space, their lights still functioning, their hulls undamaged. But something was wrong. No ships docked at the stations. No workers moved through the transparent corridors. No responses came from communication attempts. When the rescue team boarded the first station, they found it completely empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. 3,000 Zephyrian workers had simply vanished without a trace. The equipment was still running. Meals sat half-finished in the cafeteria. Personal belongings remained untouched in the quarters. But in the main corridor, spray-painted on the polished metal wall in crude Zephyrian script, were two words that made Zexthai's artificial heart skip a beat. "We remember." Commander Hoon emerged from the shadows of the abandoned station's cargo bay, his black tactical suit making him nearly invisible against the darkened hull. His team of 12 human survivors moved like ghosts through the Zephyrian facility, their footsteps silent on the metal deck plates. For months they had studied everything they could capture about Zephyrian technology. They learned how their artificial voices worked, how their computer systems operated, how their society functioned. They became experts in weaknesses the Zephyrians never knew they had. "Status report," Hoon whispered into his communication device. Speaking in perfect Zephyrian, Sergeant Park's voice came back through the secure channel. "All 3 stations cleared. Workers relocated to our hidden facility in the asteroid belt. No casualties. Security recordings? Wiped clean. As far as their computers know, nothing happened here." Hoon smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had made one critical mistake when they conquered Earth. They assumed humans would fight like every other species they had encountered. Stand-up battles, formal surrenders, accepting defeat when overwhelmed. They didn't understand that humans had been fighting guerrilla wars for thousands of years. "Phase 1 complete," he reported to the Resistance Network, using an encrypted channel that bounced signals off 17 different relay points. "They have no idea what's coming." Across the galaxy, similar reports trickled in through the human Resistance Network. On the water world of Aquanis, Commander Lee's team had infiltrated a coalition supply depot. Instead of destroying it, they had contaminated the food supplies with a harmless but foul-tasting bacteria that made coalition rations inedible for weeks. In the Titan mining colonies, Captain Kim's squad had hacked into the automated mining systems. The giant machines now occasionally stopped working and displayed random Korean phrases on their control screens. The confused Titan operators couldn't figure out why their equipment kept shouting, "Earth remembers you," in various human languages. Lieutenant Song had perhaps the most creative approach. Her team had infiltrated a coalition communications relay station and begun inserting subtle changes into official broadcasts. Military orders were delayed by crucial minutes. Supply schedules were altered by single digits that threw off entire logistical chains. News reports contained small errors that made coalition officials look incompetent. The psychological effect was devastating. Coalition species began looking over their shoulders, wondering when the humans would strike next. They installed additional security systems, changed patrol routes, and implemented new communication protocols. But nothing worked because they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow conventional military tactics. The insectoid hives reported swarms of missing drones, only to find them days later in impossible locations with small human messages attached. The Psychic Collective discovered their mental networks being disrupted by human minds that somehow resisted their telepathic scanning. The machine intelligence found their databases infected with corrupted data that spelled out human names when decoded. Admiral Zexthai found himself dealing with increasingly frantic reports from across coalition space. Mining operations disrupted, supply convoys delayed, communication networks unreliable. Nothing major enough to indicate a full-scale rebellion, but constant minor problems that added up to a massive headache. "How many humans escaped during the Earth bombardment?" he demanded from his intelligence officers. "Estimated casualties were 98%, sir. Perhaps 2 million survivors scattered across space in various ships and stations. 2 million humans loose in a galaxy of trillions. Should have been insignificant. But somehow, these survivors were making their presence felt across hundreds of star systems." Commander Hoon watched from his hidden base as coalition patrol ships increased their frequency. The aliens were getting nervous, jumping at shadows, seeing threats where none existed. "Perfect. Beginning Phase 2, he reported to the network. "Time to show them what real fear looks like." The human survivors weren't retreating to lick their wounds or find a safe corner of the galaxy to hide in. They were hunting, turning the vast expanse of coalition space into their personal battleground. Every species that had participated in Earth's conquest would learn to fear the survivors of the third planet. The galaxy was about to discover that humans didn't just wage war, they perfected it into an art form that went far beyond simple violence. They had learned to wage war on the mind, on the spirit, on the very concept of safety itself. And they were just getting started. 3 years after first contact, the Coalition's mighty empire was crumbling from within like a diseased tree. Captain Ra adjusted her stolen Keth uniform and checked the holographic display showing the enemy military convoy ahead. Her crew of 30 humans operated the captured Coalition destroyer with deadly efficiency, each of them fluent in at least 3 alien languages. Target convoy consists of 12 ships carrying weapons to the outer rim. Colonies, reported Ensign Han from the tactical station. Heavy escort, but they're following standard Keth formation patterns. Ra smiled coldly. The Keth Empire prided itself on military tradition, which made them predictable. Signal the convoy using Admiral Korvac's personal identification codes. Tell them we're conducting a surprise inspection. The captured Coalition ships bore no human markings, no identification that could trace back to Earth's survivors. To any scanner, Ra's vessel appeared to be just another Keth military ship conducting routine operations. Convoy leader is responding, Captain, announced Communications Officer Jun. They're granting us permission to dock and inspect their cargo. 20 minutes later, Ra and her boarding team walked through the convoy's lead ship wearing perfect Keth uniforms and speaking flawless Keth military dialect. The alien crew never suspected that humans had learned to mimic their appearance using advanced holographic disguises captured from Coalition technology. Impressive cargo manifest, Ra commented to the Keth ship captain, a massive red-skinned warrior with ceremonial battle scars. These plasma rifles are destined for the rebellion suppression on Titan Prime, correct? Yes, honored Inspector, the captain replied, his tusks gleaming with pride. The insurgents there will learn the price of defying the Coalition. Ra nodded, approvingly while her team spread throughout the ship. Within minutes, they had identified key systems, mapped security protocols, and located the most valuable equipment. The Keth crew remained completely unaware that their inspector was actually their most wanted enemy. We're satisfied with your operation, Ra announced. Continue your mission with honor. As her team returned to their ship, they left behind tiny devices that would soon disable the convoy's engines and communication systems. By the time the Keth realized what had happened, Ra's crew would be long gone with the convoy's entire weapons shipment. How do they keep finding us? Demanded Keth Commander Velnos 3 days later, standing in the wreckage of his command center. This was the 7th convoy lost in 2 months, always the same pattern. Ships approached using proper identification. Codes conducted routine inspections, then vanished along with critical supplies. His warrior pride lay shattered around him like broken armor. The Keth Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds through superior strength and military discipline. But these humans fought like shapeshifters, appearing as friends before striking like predators. Sir, we've changed our convoy routes 8 times, reported his aide, a young warrior whose confidence had been replaced by nervous fear. We've altered communication codes, modified inspection procedures, even used randomized departure times. Nothing works. The answer came from an unexpected source. Elder Keth Morai materialized in the command center, his ancient form flickering with exhaustion. The holographic projection had traveled across vast distances to reach them, powered by technology older than the Coalition itself. Because they learn, young warrior, the elder said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. They learn everything about us, our patterns, our fears, our weaknesses. We taught them war, and they have perfected it beyond our comprehension. Velnos slammed his armored fist against a console. They're just primitives. How can they outthink our military strategists? They are not primitives anymore, Keth Morai replied sadly. They have become something far more dangerous. They have become us, but better. Lieutenant Wu monitored Coalition communications from a hidden base carved into an asteroid in neutral space. Banks of captured alien computers surrounded her. Each one intercept thousands of messages every hour. Human teams had infiltrated every major Coalition world, and their intelligence network now surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. We're receiving confirmation from Operation Starfish. reported analyst Yoon from her workstation. The Zephyrian and insectoid delegations are blaming each other for the supply shortages. Border tensions are increasing. Wu nodded with satisfaction. Humans had learned to speak every coalition language perfectly, to understand cultural nuances that even other coalition species missed. They used this knowledge like a surgeon's scalpel, making precise cuts in the fabric of alliance that held the coalition together. "What about the psychic collective?" Wu asked. "Major breakthrough there," Yoon replied excitedly. "Sergeant Kim's team has convinced them that the machine intelligence is planning to copy their consciousness patterns for military use. The collective is demanding an immediate investigation. This was humanity's greatest advantage. They didn't just fight the coalition militarily, they fought socially, psychologically, culturally. Human teams posed as traders, diplomats, technicians, and refugees. They learned secrets, spread rumors, exploited ancient grudges, and turned coalition species against each other with surgical precision. The aquatic councils now refuse to share water-rich worlds with the Desert Federation. The energy beings suspected the material races of planning to harvest their essence. The hive minds believed the individual species were plotting to fragment their collective consciousness. "Sir, incoming priority message from Captain Ra," announced communications specialist Choi. "Operation completed successfully. 12 more Keth supply ships neutralized, weapons secured." Wu allowed herself a rare smile. 3 years ago, humans had been a single species confined to one planet. Now they were everywhere, invisible predators moving through coalition space like ghosts. They had studied their enemies so thoroughly that they could impersonate any species, infiltrate any facility, exploit any weakness. The hunters had become the apex predators, not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through their greatest strength, the ability to adapt, learn, and become whatever the situation required. The coalition had awakened something that refused to stay conquered, something that turned their own strengths against them. And with each passing day, the humans grew stronger while their enemies grew weaker, divided and afraid. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson: never underestimate a species that refuses to surrender. The coalition's capital world of Zentari, Prime burned as human fleets emerged from hyperspace, like vengeful spirits returning from the dead. Hundreds of ships materialized in perfect formation, each one a captured coalition vessel, now flying under human command. The irony was deliberate and devastating. Admiral Jin stood on the bridge of the human flagship, a massive Zephyrian dreadnought that had once been Admiral Zexthai's personal command ship. Years of war had left their mark on Jin's face, scars crossing his weathered features, like a map of humanity's journey from victims to victors. His eyes, once filled with desperate hope, now burned with cold determination. All stations report. "Ready, Admiral," announced Captain Ra from the tactical console. Her uniform bore no rank insignia, no national flags, just a simple patch showing Earth's blue marble against black space. Through the main viewport, Centauri Prime spread below, them like a jewel of civilization. The planet housed 17 billion beings from dozens of species, all living in the gleaming cities that represented 10,000 years of galactic progress. Orbital platforms ringed the world, each one larger than Earth's moon, containing governments, trade centers, and cultural monuments. But today that civilization trembled. "Coalition Defense Fleet is moving to intercept," reported Lieutenant Wu from the sensor station. 200 ships, mostly Keth and Zephyrian designs. Jin watched the enemy formation with the patience of a predator. "Broadcast our message on all frequencies." The communication went out across every channel, in every coalition language spoken by humans who had learned to sound exactly like native speakers. "This is Admiral Jin of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your governments attacked our world without provocation. You ignored warnings. You chose war. Now face the consequences." The coalition fleet opened fire first, plasma beams and particle weapons, lighting up space like deadly fireworks. But the human ships moved with inhuman precision, their formations flowing like water around the enemy attacks. Years of studying coalition tactics had taught humanity exactly how their enemies thought, how they planned, how they fought, Return fire, Jin ordered calmly. The human fleet responded with weapons the Coalition had never seen before. Kinetic rounds that punched through energy shields like they were paper. Viral programs that turned enemy computers against their own ships. Psychological warfare broadcasts that caused panic among Coalition crews who suddenly heard the voices of their dead comrades. The battle lasted 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships fought with the efficiency of machines and the creativity of organic minds. They used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, turning disabled Coalition vessels into guided missiles, broadcasting surrender offers while launching sneak attacks, impersonating friendly ships to get close enough for devastating strikes. When the orbital defenses fell silent, Jin's fleet descended toward the capital city like an unstoppable storm. The Coalition High Council chambers had been hastily converted into a fortress, but human infiltration teams had been in place for months. The massive doors opened without resistance, revealing the terrified faces of beings who had once commanded the galaxy. Admiral Jin walked into the chamber flanked by his officers, their footsteps echoing in the vast space designed to intimidate visitors. But today the intimidated ones were the Coalition leaders who knelt in surrender before the humans they had once dismissed as primitives. Admiral Zexitai's metallic body showed signs of damage, his artificial voice crackling with static. "This is impossible. You were defeated. Your world was conquered." "You conquered a planet," Jin replied quietly, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You didn't conquer us." Before him knelt the surviving Coalition leaders, the same beings who had dismissed the Elders' warnings 5 years ago. The insectoid queen chittered with fear, her compound eyes reflecting the humans like a broken mirror. The psychic collectives. Representative trembled as human minds somehow resisted her telepathic probes. The Trade Federation's ambassador calculated profits and losses with desperate confusion. "You came to our world offering slavery disguised as civilization," Jin said, his words measured and deliberate. "We offered you a choice, leave us alone or face the consequences. You chose poorly." Elder Keth Marai materialized in the chamber, his ancient holographic form flickering with exhaustion. The old being had watched this pattern repeat across galactic history, but never quite like this. "You have become what I feared most, young human," the elder said, his voice filled with sorrow and recognition. "Not conquerors, but judges." Jin turned to face the ancient being who had tried to warn the Coalition. "We didn't want this. We wanted to be left alone to grow and explore at our own pace. But you forced our hand. Now the galaxy will remember, never wake the humans, never threaten Earth again." The surviving Coalition species were given a choice that echoed across every world in their former empire: exile to the outer rim of the galaxy, beyond human space, or complete extinction. Most chose exile, gathering their possessions and fleeing to the dark edges of known space. The Keth Empire, once proud warriors, became wandering nomads. The Zephyrian fleets scattered to forgotten star systems. The psychic collective withdrew into hidden enclaves, their mental networks forever scarred by contact with human minds that refused to be dominated. Lieutenant Park coordinated the exodus from the command center, watching as massive colony ships departed Centauri Prime, carrying millions of refugees. "All major Coalition species have been relocated, sir. The core worlds are now under human administration," but Jin shook his head. "We're not administrators. We're guardians. The humans didn't seek to rule the galaxy in the traditional sense. They established monitoring stations, patrol fleets, and communication networks, but they didn't govern alien worlds or collect tribute from conquered species. They did something far more effective. They became the galaxy's memory. Every species that remained in human-controlled space learned the story of what happened when you threatened Earth. They learned about the Coalition's mistake, about the warnings that went unheeded, about the price of underestimating humanity's capacity for both adaptation and vengeance. The age of human dominance had begun, built not on conquest or exploitation, but on the simple promise that Earth would never burn again. And throughout the galaxy, in whispered conversations and official documents, The new rule was written in every language: never wake the humans. The end.